I'm going to start recording. Hello and welcome everyone to the Partners Amphibian and Reptile Conservation Amphibian Week Partner Engagement Webinar. This is our first time holding this partner engagement webinar, so we're really excited that you all can join us today. And we're even more excited to talk to you about amphibians and how awesome they are, and then hopefully get you jazzed up and excited about joining us for Amphibian Week. My name is Carrie Wickstead. I'm the former state agencies coordinator for the Partners Amphibian and Reptile Conservation. And with me today is Michelle Chrisman, who is with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and she is the federal agencies coordinator for PARC. And she is one of the founders, original founders of Amphibian Week. I believe it was actually her idea to start all of this. So really, really excited about all of that. So I am going to get started with a quick poll, and there are 3 questions. 2 of them are kind of trivia questions, and then the third one is just to find out a little bit more about what you like. So I'm going to launch the poll. You should see 3 questions. For those of you on the Zoom desktop version, you should see the first question: which country is home to the most species of amphibians? The second question is, what is the world's largest amphibian? And that's kind of by length. And then the other one is, what is your favorite group of amphibians? So why don't we go ahead and answer those poll questions before we jump into the official webinar. Ooh, I'm seeing some clear winners for question number 1. We got a really amphibian savvy audience. Little more hesitation on question 2. And then 2 different groups of amphibians are neck and neck for number 3. So give you another 30 seconds or so to answer that question. Looks like most of you have answered it. And again, our 3 questions are: which country is home to the most species of amphibians? What is the world's largest amphibian? And what is your favorite group of amphibians? Oh, I see some toad and frog love there in the chat. All right. Well, in the interest of time, I'm going to end the poll, but you can put your answers in the chat if you would like. So hopefully you're seeing the screen that has the answers. You're seeing that, Michelle? Not seeing the answers?
I think the audience might be. I am not, however, as well.
Okay. So question number 1 is, which country is home to the most species of amphibians? And almost 90% of you got that right. So it is Brazil. So that is, Central and South America are some of the hot spots for amphibian diversity in the world. So good job if you got Brazil. And question number 2 is, what is the world's largest amphibian? And the answer, there was some contention there. It's actually the Chinese giant salamanders. So I'll be talking about that one in a little bit. And then what is your favorite group of amphibians? We had a really, really close call there between frogs and salamanders, but salamanders won with 43% of the audience, and frogs came in at 37%. So cool stuff. All right. So let's get to it. Welcome again to the Partners of Amphibian Reptile Conservation Amphibian Week webinar. We're so thrilled that you can join us today to learn more about amphibians, Amphibian Week, and how to get involved. So just for those of you who are unfamiliar with PARC, we're an unaffiliated network that is focused on proactive partnerships to conserve amphibians, reptiles, and the places that they live. We partner with the Amphibian and Reptile Conservancy, aka ARC, which provides administrative and financial support for some of our activities. However, PARC is just a network of people, a lot of which are volunteers, that come together collaboratively to work on issues that relate to amphibians and reptiles. So, to start off, we wanted to provide a little context on exactly what an amphibian is. Amphibian, the word comes from the Greek amphi and bios, meaning double life. And that's part of the reason for our theme this year of being masters of two worlds, which I'll talk about. So, this term generally references the metamorphosis that amphibians undergo from aquatic larvae to mostly terrestrial adults. But not all amphibians fit into this generalized category. There's many amphibian species that around the world that fall into different groups as well. We saw the preferences of the group, but amphibians can be frogs, they can be toads, they can be Caecilians, they can be newts, and they could be salamanders. And around the world, there are at least 8,000 species that have been described so far. But as you probably know, we're constantly learning about new species, new in terms of science and all of that. So that number is probably much higher. So obviously, you're hanging out on a Thursday afternoon to learn a little bit more about amphibians and to engage with Amphibian Week. But amphibians are extremely important for all of us, not just for the ecosystems, but also us as humans and for the networks that they help support. So most salamanders, frogs, toads, and Caecilians prey on invertebrates, particularly a lot of insects, and they help to keep those populations in check. Prey items include everything from biting midges, mosquitoes, and even forest pests at both juvenile and adult stages. And from the prey perspective, on the other end of the spectrum, think about how amphibians and how often they have these explosive breeding events, particularly in the spring, ushering in thousands of eggs and larvae that can be consumed by other organisms. So they're supporting both sides of the spectrum as predators and prey. A study in New Hampshire found that salamanders actually have high concentrations of calcium. So, on that prey end of the spectrum, they're actually an important calcium source for a number of predator species like birds and some of the medium sized mammals and snakes. Due to their abundance and fast gut processing times, grazing and filtering feeding, tadpoles tend to increase nitrogen availability and increase nitrogen flux through wetlands. So that can help with that nutrient cycling. Some of our amphibian species are also very sensitive to changes in the environment, and that's why we consider them the proverbial canaries in the coal mines as these ecosystem indicators. And then, even still, we're learning from our amphibians, and medical advances in biotechnology is hinging on some of the amazing tactics and adaptations that these amphibians use to survive. For example, species like the wood frog, which you can see in the lower bottom, in the lower left-hand corner of my screen here, this species can literally freeze months at a time due to a cryoprotectant in its blood. And researchers are looking at ways that they actually can freeze but still not damage their organs as a way to be able to actually transport human organs and other for transplants and for other applications. So those are just a few of the many examples of why they're really, really important. Some of these species also are really, really abundant. And just recently, a study by USGS researchers and others, some of which are involved with Amphibian Week, found that the densities of redback salamanders in eastern forests were higher than previously thought. In fact, biomass density exceeded the amount of larger species, of those salamanders exceeded larger species like deer and mice, and even things like black bears. And the study authors actually estimated an average of 5,300 salamanders per football field sized forest patch. So that's a tremendous amount of biomass just from these tiny little salamanders. And that's just looking at one species in our midst. So let's kick things off and start talking about some of the different species of amphibians that are out there. And I decided to start with a bit of a throwback of this really cool creature. I might be butchering the name, but Succus. It's a genus of extremely large amphibians from the Middle Permian era, which was about 270 to 300 million years ago. Its remains were found primarily in Brazil, where the highest amphibian diversity still exists today. And this genus is said to contain the largest known amphibian that ever lived. And while we don't know exactly how large that animal was, the most complete or the largest skull that was ever found was 5.2 feet long, and that was just the skull. So researchers estimated that the size of that animal was probably around 30 feet when it was alive. So it was crocodilian in appearance, and it was definitely a formidable predator way back in the day. Moving along, let's chat about the least known group of amphibians, the Caecilians. The Caecilian name comes from a Latin word meaning caecus, which means blind and hidden. And so some of our Caecilian species are eyeless, and others have these kind of small eyes that are hidden under skin. They range in size by species. Some of them are only about 3 inches in length, and the largest one is around 5 feet in length. They have these short sensory tentacles located between their eyes and nostrils that help them probe their environment and find their prey. And then they have a really interesting feeding strategy for young Caecilians. I don't know if all do this, but at least several species, the young actually will stay with the mother for several weeks after birth, and they'll feed on her fatty outer layer of skin that has fats and other nutrients to essentially survive. So this parental service is called maternal dermatotrophy, or essentially eating mom's skin. Oops, wrong way. Moving along to my favorite salamander species, it's the Hellbender, and it's a wild salamander. It's lovingly known as a snot otter and also old lasagna slides or lasagna lizard. They're the largest salamanders in North America, and as the snot otter title suggests, they're really, really slimy. So as adults, they have these special skin folds that you can see off to the side, and they use those to absorb oxygen. They lose their gills around 2 years of age, so they need to have those gular folds there essentially to help them breathe and clear fast moving oxygenated streams. So if a hellbender ends up in a location that has water that's moving too slow or doesn't have enough oxygen, then it's not going to be able to survive in that environment. So they're a very sensitive species, and they really rely on clean water to be able to survive. At this time, the hellbenders also have been recently proposed as as endangered on the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service endangered species list, and I believe the public comment for that is still open at the moment. Moving on to one of your trivia questions, talking about the largest amphibians in the world and its cousins. So the Chinese giant salamander is the world's largest amphibian, reaching lengths of almost 6 feet. And in the middle, we have this giant, the Japanese giant salamander, which can get up to 5 feet in length. All 3 of these species are North American hellbender, the Japanese giant salamander, and Chinese giant salamander are all not doing the best out in the wild. But they're really, really amazing ancient creatures that are found in these different aquatic environments throughout the world. Moving along to my favorite toad imposter family, it's the Spadefoot toad family. They always seem to look utterly confused, which is why they're totally relatable to me. I mean, like, look at that face right there. As I mentioned, they're not actually true toads. But they have a toad-like appearance, and toad is in their common name. So these, as their names also suggest, the spadefoot of their name refers to this keratinized digit on the back of their hind feet that helps aid in their ability to dig underground, where they spend most of their life. Apparently, some of the Western spadefoot toads also smell like peanut butter due to the toxin that they secrete when they're stressed out. So don't handle those Western spadefoot toads and make a sandwich, or just try not to handle them at all to help reduce stress to the animal. So there's several different species of spadefoot toads in North America, and east of the Mississippi, the only known species is this eastern spadefoot. And here are a few pictures from an explosive breeding event here in Maryland at a time when I was teaching. And so we grabbed one of them, and on the second picture there, you can see that little keratinized digit. That is the spade that they use to dig down into the soil. So as I mentioned, they have this process called explosive breeding, where essentially they wait for an extremely heavy rainstorm to emerge from their sandy burrows, and then all of a sudden, literally thousands of them will appear, have this crazy breeding frenzy, and then they all disappear back underground. So it's a really easy to miss event, but a magical event if you can ever see it. So females can lay several thousand eggs at once, and it takes as little as 2 to 4 days for some of this species to hatch. In places like Rhode Island, there's been a lot of work to reintroduce spadefoots into areas that they formerly occupied. Unfortunately, our amphibians are in trouble. The most recent amphibian assessment, the global amphibian assessment, found that 40.7% of amphibian species are globally threatened, and that number has only increased since the first global assessment occurred. And as you might imagine, habitat loss and degradation are some of those top level threats to amphibians. Invasive species, which are non-native species that are problematic, are also problematic to amphibians. And some of these include amphibians that have been introduced to other areas. For example, bullfrogs are native where I'm at in the eastern North America and in Maryland, but out in the western parts of the states, they're actually highly invasive. Then there are things like African clawed frogs and Cuban toads, which have been, Cuban tree frogs, which have been introduced via the pet trade and or as hitchhikers. They're also becoming invasive in different areas. And so we see different dynamics between these species and the species that are naturally occurring in those systems. Certainly, climate change is an issue for amphibians, and some of our most pressing climate threats centered around amphibians found in unique places like the Sky Islands or on the tops of mountain peaks where some of our salamanders exist. Our roads can be a huge issue for migratory amphibians like our mole salamanders, which travel to vernal pools or those temporary wetlands in the spring. And of course, we have things like disease, and ranavirus and BSAL are two major diseases, one of which is here in North America, ranavirus, and BSAL, which is over in Europe and Asia, that we're really, really concerned about. And unfortunately, we also see apathy and persecution, where some people just don't care about amphibians, and others will even intentionally kill them. So to help increase awareness about amphibians and their plight and, kind of reverse that apathy and persecution, Partners of Amphibian and Reptile Conservation founded PARC in 2020. This is an international awareness week that's celebrated annually, the first full week in May. And then each year, as a group, we select a yearly theme and kind of plan activities and ideas and messages around that yearly theme. So due to the pandemic, Amphibian Week started out online in May of 2020, but the last 2 years we've actually been able to hold in-person events, and partners also held events. So we held events in the United States, mainly in the DC region, and then partners held events in Canada and France and even in Nepal. So this year's theme is Masters of Two Worlds, celebrating the dual nature of most amphibian species' lives. And with that theme, we have our 7 different daily themes. Each day, we try to highlight different aspects about amphibians using facts and features that line up with the overall theme. Some of the times we do recycle some of these daily themes. For example, Throwback Thursday is one of our most popular topics, where we talk about some of those really cool ancient amphibians that once graced our presence. We also have try to end Amphibian Week with, call to action. So getting people, now that they're aware of different amphibians, thinking about how they can help amphibians as individuals and within their communities and in a more global sense as well. So, how the heck do you celebrate Amphibian Week? This is a question that we often get, and is the reason why we're putting on this webinar today. So, the simplest way to celebrate Amphibian Week is just to participate online by amplifying our different messages. So, we put out posts on social media, and we have hashtags that we use, like hashtag Amphibian Week, hashtag Amphibian Week 2025, hashtag Masters of Two Worlds. So we try to have these different ways that we celebrate online, and just amplifying those posts can really help bring the message about amphibians to your different networks. You can also join events. We have a map of events, and we have events that are both online and in person that are being hosted by the Amphibian Week planning team, and then also partners like maybe some of you. And so these are just some ideas of how to get involved. And I'm going to go through some examples of some of our different events that either we have hosted or others have hosted online. But before I do, I want to talk about some of the different resources that the planning team has developed in order to help you with engaging with the Amphibian Week. So new this year, and as of today, we just put out our Amphibian Week Engagement Toolkit, which is a PDF that you can find online. And I'll have Michelle share a link in the chat that's going to have some of these different resources that I'm talking about as well. In addition, we have a social media toolkit. So the social media toolkit lines up with the different daily themes. It has ideas that you can literally copy and paste and put in your own on your own social channels. And we even have social media graphics that you can use for free. Some of these graphics are in English, and some are in Spanish and Portuguese and all of that. So we try our best to produce materials that others can use. We have great resources that have been developed by our partners. These posters at the bottom are posters that you can download and print on your own. They're from Ela with the Frog Cult. She made those specifically for us to use to share with others to print out for Amphibian Week. We also have a whole education outreach page that not only covers amphibians, but it includes our reptiles too. And it gives you ideas about how to teach about amphibians. Some of them are short, fun activities like Frog Talk, which is an interactive and hilarious way to learn about frog calls by making frog calls and trying to find the frogs that are making the same calls as you. So Frog Talk is one of our activities. We have amphibian scavenger hunts that you can go and take out and engage with. And we even have some lesson plans for classroom educators that can use them in a more formal sense and all of that. To help folks find and advertise events, we'll be running this interactive map on our page. And essentially, it's pretty sparse right now because we're really early on in the season, but we'll be adding events to this page, and you can go zoom into your area and find different events, both online and in person, and learn how to sign up for them with this map that's on our page. For those of you who are thinking about running events or hosting events, you can sign up on Google or on our Google form. And once you input that information, we will have one of our volunteers put it on the map, and we'll even help you advertise that information. So the sooner you can get that information to us, the better, and the greater chances we'll have time to help advertise and get the word out about whatever you're hosting. So as mentioned earlier, we have this online social media toolkit that has ideas that you can copy and paste for each of the daily themes, as well as sample graphics to use. It's available as a PDF, and it's also available as a Word document, because some people said that sometimes it's hard to kind of copy and paste from that PDF. So we added both this year, and we also have previous year's social media toolkits, and some of those materials are still relevant today and still can give you some ideas on things to post. So last year we held, our theme was all about the Olympics and Olympic champions on our amphibian realm. So we actually had an Olympic competition featuring various amphibian athletes that people voted on each day to select their top amphibian contenders. And Northeast PARC, which is a regional section of PARC, we represent the national park. Northeast PARC took it even a step further and created these fun brackets for people to select their champion amphibians. So it was just a really fun way to teach about amphibians and have some friendly competition with some of our partners on the planning team. And USGS took home the gold medal with their rough-skinned newt that was their amphibian contender. Another partner held an online photo competition. So just different ways to engage people in that online landscape. One of the events that was held by the Amphibian Week Education and Outreach team this last 2 years was a K through 12 art contest. And again, this was an online art contest. So we split it was 4 categories the first year, and then we split it into 5 categories last year. And the categories are based on the grade bands for the students. And we had the students create artwork based on the yearly theme, and then they had to write a sentence related to that yearly theme. For example, this artwork was one of our winners in our elementary category 2 years ago, and it was about discovering amphibians. So then we have a panel of volunteer, or all the artwork gets submitted online. And then we have a panel of volunteer judges who would rank the different artwork. And then everybody who ranked in our top categories received educational prizes like books or binoculars or some fun stickers. And we made sure everybody who entered also got a certificate of recognition. It was a great way. We had a lot of fun seeing all this artwork. And this past year, people also submitted more 3D artwork. We had some students that knitted some of their artwork or created clay content and sent us pictures of it. And it was just a really, really cool way to infuse art and education relating to amphibians. Story times are another way to engage with Amphibian Week, and you can do these in person or online. Last year, we did 2 online story times, and they were with Frog Song by Megan Hollinsworth and Salamander Season by Jennifer Keats Curtis and Adam Frederick. And essentially, what we did is we invited the authors, got permission to be able to do an online reading of the books. And then after reading the book, we had an activity. So for Frog Song, we made origami frogs as a group online. And then for Salamander Season, we were talking about camouflage patterns and all of that. So we sent out little outlines of salamanders, and all the participants drew their own salamanders and showed it off. So we have a whole K through 12 book list online, which is linked in that Wakelet link that Michelle's sharing in the chat. So if you're looking for ideas, we've got you covered. We have both fiction and nonfiction books. And this is a great way to connect with people. You can go to community centers and do these story times. You can go to a library. You can go to a local school. You can even do like an amphibian book club, because some of these are longer books to read as well. So these are all just possibilities on how you can engage. So Tessa Fritz, who's pictured here on the left, she's with the Santa Barbara Museum of Natural History and Sea Center. She was on our education outreach team last year, and she hosted the Santa Barbara Bioblitz. And in this Bioblitz, they hosted a mini amphibian, or they hosted an iNaturalist project. Essentially for 1 month, people were submitting their amphibian sightings in that defined area in Santa Barbara, California. And then on top of that, she had a pre-Blitz webinar where we talked about Amphibian Week and went over amphibian calls and amphibian identification. And then they had a local guided hike that was included those, people going out together with her and others, as you can see pictured here, going to find amphibians and all of that. And then after that, she encouraged those who joined in to continue their observations throughout the month. So it was a really fun way to engage, and they're excited about doing this again, and really building up some of those community science observations in the area. So as I mentioned earlier, our core team has been doing these different events in DC for the last 2 years. We've held them at the National Zoo, the Natural History Museum, and on the National Mall. And so these events have consisted of a number of active and passive activities for all ages. So pictured here, you can see some of the coloring masterpieces that were happening. We've had tabletop events and information. Down here, this is one of our planning team, Erin Muths with USGS. She is demonstrating how to dramatically die as part of the salamander migration activity. We have an activity called Marvelous Marbled Migration, about teaching about marbled salamanders and their migration. And so she set up this activity, and you go around and see if you can actually survive as a migrating marbled salamander. Unfortunately, she did not in this instance, but some do survive and breed, and it's all about learning. The other thing that I was just going to mention before I move on with this slide is that this character right here, Phil the frog, is kind of our unofficial mascot. And if you come to DC and visit us, you will get to meet Phil and take your pictures with Phil. And Phil, I think, has his own Instagram page. As Amphibian Week has grown, so have the opportunities. And last year we were approached by Tangled Bank Studios to have a special screening of a short film called The Frog Arc, which talked about work that was being done in South America to essentially save amphibians from extinction. And so we paired this with a panel of some of the scientists that were featured in the film and others. And we had a wonderful event. And this event, or this short film, The Frog Arc, is linked in that Wakelet, and it's available to use for educational screenings. So if you've got a place and you would like to screen this film, that's something that's available for free and for use. So you can film, show short or long videos. You can make a film festival celebrating amphibians. There are a lot of different ideas and directions that you can go in. So a few other ideas that you can hop into. You can do amphibian trivia. So we did a couple trivia questions here at the beginning of this presentation. And amphibian trivia can be in person or online. So there are really easy online tools like Kahoot that you can do pretty engaging activities and all of that. And there's just so many fun facts about amphibians. I myself am constantly learning. Today, I learned while putting together the final throws of this presentation that this poor little group of frogs, the Brachycephalus, have gotten smaller and smaller over time. But as they've kind of shrunk, so has their ability to effectively land. And so researchers are looking at how that downsizing in the evolution landscape has resulted in their ability to not really be able to land. So can you think of that, a frog that isn't really good at jumping? Well, there's several species out there, and people have created these wonderful GIFs of them rolling over and all of that. You can take people out for a local herp hike, and we have some resources like disinfection guidelines, so you're not accidentally spreading disease to some of these different areas. And we also have ethical herp practice guidelines, which are going to be expanded upon with our new ethical herp and observation standards working group, which is getting underway. But we have the basics there for you to take folks out and ideas. And usually there are local local experts who are willing to take folks out as well. So always just reach out, and you'll be surprised. A lot of people are really willing to help out, but you just have to ask. You can host a herpy hour at a local brewery featuring a talk on local amphibians or some other food themed event. And if you don't want to do something at a brewery, there are lots of different possibilities there. And then on the action side of things, you can host cleanups or plantings. So trash cleanups, planting native plants, either in your backyard or your community, those types of things are really, really helpful. And even just teaching about sustainable landscape practices, like leaving the leaves in the fall to keep as that habitat resource for amphibians that are going to overwinter. Those are all things that you can teach about and engage the community with that are all really, really easy to do. So overall, the opportunities are endless. You can engage as much or as little as you would like. We hope you find a way to celebrate the joy and wonder of amphibians throughout the week and beyond. The more we can shine a light on these fantastic creatures, the better chance we'll have to save them. So we hope that you enjoyed today's webinar and it helped inspire you to join the pond and participate in our Amphibian Week celebration. We will be holding Amphibian Week May 4th through 10th this year. And we also just created a newsletter sign up, essentially just for Amphibian Week news. We have a PARC newsletter, but this one is going to be a little more regular and it's just going to be focused on Amphibian Week. So you can use this QR code to sign up for that Amphibian Week information, or at the bottom of the wakelet, there's also a link to sign up for that newsletter. And so as you send us your events, we can add that to the newsletter and talk about these different ideas and everything. So in closing, we would like to thank our many partners and volunteers for helping us support Amphibian Week. The info that I provided, all these slides and ideas and pictures and all these resources, it's all a labor of love of many, many different people who are coming together to bring this wonderful world of amphibians to everyone. And so we just want to thank all those people. There are people who and organizations who aren't part of the slide, and just want to say that this is an entirely giant group effort. So with that, I'll say thank you. I have Michelle's information up here that you can reach out and contact her. And that QR code on the screen goes directly to the 2025 Amphibian Week page. So we finished up a little early, but we wanted to give you time and space to ask questions and to ask, let us know about some of the resources that you might need or you might find helpful to engage with Amphibian Week. So I'm going to stop sharing. Okay. And change our views there. Okay. And give me a second, and I'm going to change it so you can actually unmute yourself. So if you've got questions, you can either put them in the chat or you can raise your hands and ask them, and we'll let you give a call out to folks or ask those questions.
Carrie, I just wanted to note that I put the correct email in the chat. It's parkplace.org.
Oh, sorry.
Yep, no problem. I just want to make sure that we had that correction.
And I see a question about, is this meeting recording going to be shared? Yes, we will be sharing this meeting recording to all the people who signed up. So you'll get an email blast with this meeting recording and the different links and resources that we've talked about. And in addition, we're going to add this recording to our webpage and our YouTube channel. And so I didn't talk about our YouTube channel, but we have some great little YouTube shorts from folks like, I'm an amphibian biologist talking about the different ways that people are for amphibian work in the amphibian sphere. We have some students talking about the importance of amphibians. And I think one of the links in the Wakelet is also from an amazing musician, Billy B. And he's singing about what would happen if frogs were to bite the dust, to the tune of "What If God Were One of Us." I forget who sings that song, but yeah. All right, questions? It's like people are making some connections in the chat. Oh, Joan Osborne. Thank you, Daniel. Yes. Check out that Billy B song there. And if you don't have any questions, if you have examples of how you've celebrated Amphibian Week in the past, or if you have resources that you think would be helpful to teach her about amphibians, let me know, or drop them in the chat, or raise your hand. You don't have to be shy here.
Can I speak up? I'm not shy.
Yeah.
My
Hi,
name is,
Matt.
how are you?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. My name is Matt. I'm here in Washington, D.C. And I want to, if anybody on the call is aware of and is interested in helping me promote Amphibian Week events, DC-based Amphibian Week events, particularly, I've got a community of Powell Elementary students who work very hard to designate the redback salamander DC's official amphibian, and I promised them a great big celebration. So I want to try to make good on that. So if anybody's interested, my name is Matt Dahl, and I put my email in the box. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Yes, we were really excited. The students from Powell Elementary came to the Frog Arc film screening last year, and they got it passed to have the redback salamander be the official DC state amphibian. So that's just a great example.
Carrie, that event and the opportunity to meet Brian and the other researchers had such a big impact on our little group that was there. I really wish part of what I want to accomplish is expanding the group, because it was only a small group of that students. And, obviously I wish every student could experience that.
Yeah. We'll definitely be in touch, and we'll be in the DC region. We already have several events on the books for that weekend right before Amphibian Week, but we don't have all the details out just yet. And I see in the chat, oh yes, Brenda has reminded us that the Foundation for Conservation of Salamanders is hosting the virtual 5K stroll on May 3rd. It's part of Salamanders Saturday, and they have shared that link in the chat, so we'll definitely be sending that out to folks. And Jen has shared the link to the National Zoo's amphibian page from last year, and they're going to be holding an Amphibian Week event this year. I think they're doing, is it the Sunday, Michelle, or?
Which event? I'm sorry.
The National Zoo event.
That will be on the second day. So that would be, sorry,
Sunday.
On the 4th, Sunday the 4th.
Thanks, Evan.
Yep.
All right, and I see some questions about some contacts in St. Louis, Missouri. So the St. Louis Zoo has a really amazing breeding program actually for Hellbenders and all of that. So Laura, if you reach out, I can try to get some contacts to you to connect with the St. Louis Zoo. So they might be a good resource for you there. Ooh, and Tessa has shared the link for her the iNaturalist webinar last year for the Bioblitz. So that link is in the chat. We'll be collecting all these links and adding them to the resource list for you all. And Michelle posted the link for Phil the Frog's unofficial Instagram handle, USGS Wild. Marshall Boyd said, follow Virginia Herpetological Society for all of their local events in the spring, summer, and fall. So All right, great. Well, I guess if there are no further questions, we see a little more stuff happening in the chat. But for those of you who want to jump off a little earlier, thank you all for attending. We're really, really excited that you're interested in Amphibian Week and just amphibians in general. So we're really happy that you're here, and we really hope that you celebrate with all of us this year for Amphibian Week. And of course, you don't have to just celebrate in May. There are plenty of times to celebrate amphibians and all that they are. And then if you're really, really interested in lots of herp stuff, we have Tessa Kafritz, who's in the chat. She will be leading our Wild Turtle Week celebration, which is more of an online social media celebration. That is going to be starting in June 9th through 13th, I think, this year. And then it's the Year of the Snake, and there will be Snake Week in July or August. So stay tuned for more of that information as well. All right. Well, thank you all, and have a fantastic Thursday.
Thank you so much, Carrie and Michelle.